3. Gentlemen, at first, I would like to thank you for your time and for you to give me this great chance. Also, I would like to thank the audience for attending this session, and I hope it will be informative. This session is part of MENA Information Security Conference virtual event 2021. Today, our topic is about transforming Security Operations Center and what are the new challenges and the emerging threats. Please allow me to introduce myself and our guest today. So my name is Hashim Alsaihati. I'm a cybersecurity consultant with Trend Micro with more than 12 years of experience. We have in our guest, we have Mr. Maurits, who is the Director of Intelligence Solution at Intel 471, where he specialized in bridging the gap between technology and business. Maurits has held various positions in cyber threat intelligence and IT security over the past 17 years, and he is a subject matter expert on cybercrime. We have also Mr. Osman Khan, who is currently the Chief Operation Officer at ITS Square, and he has more than 20 years of experience in IT and security across all sectors. Former roles include various senior positions with Atos, Verizon, and Schlumberger. We also have Mr. Akash, who is responsible for leading EC Consult business operations in the area of information security training and certification for business acceleration. He has been instrumental in setting up and running EC Consult operation in several countries. For over a decade now, he has been working with organizations to build and manage their security workforce. Gentlemen, I would like to thank you again for giving us this opportunity, and we will start with the questions. So my first question is for Mr. Osman. So Security Operations Center have existed for over decades. What has changed in the recent few years?
Thank you, Hashim, for the question. I think one of the things that you need to look at, if you look at the SOCs historically, the challenges were different, right? So data was typically within a confined area within your data centers. And so you didn't have the challenges of trying to detect potential threats to your data that may be stored in the cloud, over and above your data center, but also OT environments that are now integrated with IT environments. You also have now IoT devices that are, that are also come into play as well. So, and then obviously mobility, right? So people now are carrying data on their smartphones and the like. So data, they call it the democratization of data. Data is now available anywhere, anytime, any place. What that has meant is that obviously the threats associated with those data sources has now, those data assets has become more pervasive. So your threat landscape is more pervasive. So traditionally SOCs were quite reactive and they were very limited in terms of people, process and technology. So if you look at it from a it was typically within a given location, right? Fixed location, not necessarily operating 24/7, very active in terms of the detection capabilities. So rather than being proactive, and also the tools were quite limited because obviously we didn't have things like automation and machine learning and AI capabilities now built into a number of the tool sets. So it was quite limited. Now, obviously we're now in a day and age, like I said, where the data has exploded and the volume of data is significant and it's pervasive. And as a result, we need a capability that helps to detect that and respond to that. So we can no longer, SOCs no longer operate, or at least they shouldn't be operating 8x5, right? They should certainly be 24/7. They now have more additional functions, proactive functions such as threat hunting. So this is whereby, which you're looking for threats that your security controls have potentially missed. So hunting within the log sources themselves, the raw logs themselves, and using methodology to attain that. And then obviously, like I said, you're now not monitoring just the IT assets, there's OT assets, there's physical assets, and IoT as well. And then there's new technologies that have come into play to assist us, but we're not necessarily leveraging and exploiting as much as we can, but we should. So we're talking about SOAR technologies for orchestration and automation response. You're talking about EDR and now NDR and also XDR technologies. So, and then I would say that we're moving more to, we haven't moved completely, more from signature-based detection type reactive responses to machine learning, which looks at basically anomalies within your architecture, within infrastructure, and also user behavior and analytics has come into play as well. So I'd say there's some of the changes that I've seen over the few decades, and the SOC is still evolving.
So this leads to this question, which is relevant to it. So allow me to ask this. What does it mean? What does next generation SOC mean? And why it is important for SOC to be next generation? I think this is relevant to the question you just answered.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing about next generation SOC is that, I mean, it depends who you ask, right? You'll probably get different answers depending on whom you ask. But as a general, what you'll find is that the definitions for next generation SOC, if you explore various sources, that it's intelligence driven, right? So it's no longer, and it's proactive rather than just reactive. So when we talk about intelligence, we're talking about strategic, tactical, and operational. So, for example, many SOCs today only ingest indicators of compromises, right? IOCs, and they don't necessarily subscribe to targeted threat intelligence, that basically threat intelligence that is specifically targeted against your vertical, your segment, your market, or more specifically to your organization and to your assets that you're particularly concerned about. And that's not just your IT assets, but also people assets as well. So threat intelligence is very important, and like I said, not just the IOCs, right? And you talk about David Bianco's pyramid of pain. This is the pain that potentially could be inflicted to the attackers. If you try and just identify at the lower level the IOCs that are hash values, domain names, and IP addresses, they're relatively easy for an attacker to change. But if you start to target their tactics, techniques, and procedures, i.e. their behaviors, then it's far more difficult for the attacker to compromise you as an organization, because it's more difficult for them to change their behaviors. That's why understanding your enemy, know your enemy is crucial, and that's where targeted threat intelligence is crucial to that as well. I would say also, like I said, far more proactive rather than reactive. So you're talking about threat hunting and looking, like I said, for threats within your environment that your security controls typically wouldn't picked up. And that can be both, using humans for the most part, but also using tools and technologies, right? So there's solutions out there, open source and commercial, such as Caldera, that allows you to do automated red team testing.
Thank you.
Then the other thing I would say is that, I was just going to say, in terms of the detection response capability, it's crucial that you have, SIM, SOAR capability, EDR, and moving to XDR as well. And that you're ingesting from all of the data sources that you should be ingesting from, right? And that's, like I said, physical security applications. Many SOCs don't actually ingest the application data, right? Especially with a security context as well. So, and then finally, from a people perspective, it's important that you have the right skill sets, including threat hunters, L1, L2, L3 analysts, but also ideally with people with data analytics skills and data visualization type skills as well. So they're the kind of things that you'd expect from a next generation SOC.
Thank you, Osman. I think you nailed it. Very clear answer. So this question to Maurits. So is efficiency something to worry about when building up a SOC? And how we can increase the efficiency in SOC?
Thank you, Hashim. I think that's a very good question. I think, yes, efficiency is very, very important. But both when building and actually running a SOC, it's a continuing area that is deserving attention. And the reason for that, I think Osman touched on a number of those things. I think one of the pitfalls when setting up a SOC is at its core, basically, a SOC reacts or events occur, and then it's the SOC's and the analyst's task to deal with them. And one of the pitfalls when setting up a SOC is that you, once the SOC is running, the number of events that come in is far greater than the ability of analysts to process them. And you basically get buried in events. That is if that balance is out of kilter, then that's a surefire way for people to get very demotivated, because no matter how hard they work, they just can't keep on top of things. So when setting up the SOC, one of the key things is to make sure that you're not collecting or looking at more things than you can actually handle. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Now, one of the ways in which you can increase the ability of things you can deal with is to simply become more efficient. One is to increase resources, but you can't keep doing that forever. So basically, you need to work within the constraints of resources that you have, and then efficiency becomes your way of getting more mileage out of those same resources. Now, that's when you're setting up the SOC. When you're actually running a SOC, this will continue to be an area of attention, because I think, and as Osman already indicated in his answer just now, is that the responsibilities or the ambitions of the SOC will grow over time. New things will start to fall within your wheelhouse, new things that you need to deal with, new areas of responsibility, new technologies, the way we do things. Just mention the cloud, for instance. These fundamental changes have occurred, and they will continue to occur. There will be new technologies around the corner. So again, if you're going to take on board these additional responsibilities, you either need to increase resources. Again, you can't keep doing that forever. So you will just have to get more out of the resources that you have. So increasing the efficiency and looking to make investments that increase that efficiency. And I think the ways in which you do that is by measuring. Make sure that you're aware, where are your analysts spending the most time? What can you do to reduce that time? Because if you reduce that time spent, you'll increase the efficiency. And I guess fairly obvious, one of the candidates for increasing efficiency is to automate as much as you can. If you can take the task away from the analyst and instead have machines do it, that is an immediate increase in efficiency. So yes, efficiency is very important, both when setting up a SOC and as the SOC evolves.
Great, thank you, Maurits. This is very clear answer. So I have a question about limitation of detection and response, and that is for you, Mr. Osman. So what are the limitations of existing detection and response technologies like EDR, endpoint detection and response? So does implementing more comprehensive approach like XDR can enhance detection and response? How we can enhance the detection of response limitation in the existing technologies?
Okay, great, thanks, Hashim. So look, let's just caveat this by saying every security control out there, pretty much every one of them, has its own limitations, right? Indeed. So, and you can never eliminate risk completely, as we all know. So, so if you take EDR as an example, MITRE ATT&CK, one of the things that they've obviously developed is the attack framework, but also they have evaluated a number of the EDR platforms against the tactics techniques used by the various threat actors, the bad guys basically out there. And what we found is that for the most, they've all performed relatively well, but there are always tactics that have been missed, right? So none of them are just perfect, just in terms of functioning as an EDR alone. But again, you could argue that for a number of the security controls. So, but to answer your question, in terms of XDR capability, which enables you to have a single pane of glass that allows you to threat hunt and conduct analysis using things like machine learning and AI across not just the endpoint, right? Because EDR obviously is just focused on the endpoint, but takes input from your EDR solutions, from your NDR solutions, and also from cloud and from email. Now you've got a more holistic view of your threat landscape from which you can conduct your threat hunting and your analysis and forensics, but also response. So yeah, absolutely. The trend is definitely moving towards XDR. It just makes absolute sense. It's not a replacement for EDR, but rather complements it and should make lives easier for the analysts.
Okay, Thank you. Thank you. I got question about the automation, and this is for Maurits. So about the what is the importance of integrating automation, orchestration, and SOC, and what are the main challenges in your opinion?
So that's a really good question. I think, as I said, when we look back at increasing efficiency, and kind of increasing the ability of the SOC to get things done, then automation is key. And so SOAR, which is kind of the collective umbrella under which a lot of these technologies have been put, is a key way to achieve that. So to increase efficiency, to make sure that people are doing, your analysts are doing what they're good at, which is basically analyzing, and the kind of mundane tasks get taken out of their hands and automated as much as possible. That's one of the things where SOAR can really really help. I think a couple of the challenges are that to implement it initially, there will be an additional cost. There'll be an additional amount of effort needed to correctly implement SOAR. So there is a tendency for people to go, well, why don't we just keep doing what we're doing? And you put off that basically to go, no, spend some time, do this, and you will reap the rewards and the benefits after this initial investment. It requires potentially different skill sets for people to build and set up and, crucially, maintain your SOAR architecture or your SOAR solutions, because automation, doing things automatically, it needs to be maintained as well. I can guarantee you that your infrastructure will change, so a SOAR solution needs to be able to adapt as well. And I think the other challenge is to make sure that your SOAR, that whatever automation you achieve can actually reach into the critical parts and actually do the automation. If it ends up just short, then there's a gap, and you'll need to come up with some solution for that gap. So making sure that it actually can get down into the very pores to make all the changes that you'd like it to, be easy to maintain and easy to change.
So you mean measuring the how effective is the automation or orchestration?
Yes, and making sure that it can actually, when you say, I'd like to automate this, then whatever solution you have actually has the ability to do that. If it says, well, I can't really talk to this kind of system, then you go, well, then we can't automate this, and we're again left with this little gap. And that's where that new skill set comes in for the specialists to be able to set that up. But once you invest, take the time and the effort, spend the time and the effort and the resource to set that up, you will then reap the benefits, which is increased efficiency. And so, yes, it's absolutely a very worthwhile technology to be looking at.
Great, thank you. So, in your opinion, what kind of external resources can add a value to a SOC?
So I think there's three, and I think we'll start. Basically, let's try and move through an event happens and we deal with it, that kind of sequence. At the very beginning, I think one of the key external resources is intelligence. Osman already mentioned it, a proactive SOC. Instead of being purely reactive, an event happens, we try and figure out what's going on and deal with it. Intelligence can help you understand, the threat landscape, what are actors out there, what are they doing? So that helps you kind of put into context, what is this? When you see something happening, you can immediately relate, think, oh, this may be an instance of this, or it's an instance of that. And that means that your course of action becomes clearer. But, and also there are good quality kind of feeds that can help you feed in like stuff like IOCs, etc. However, that is certainly not the main part where intelligence can help. It can help by creating situational awareness. It can help you by understanding the threat actors, which actors are targeting your region, which are targeting your vertical. What is their typical MO? Not just what malware are they using today, but how do they go about what they do, their activities? What are the types of technologies that they target, for instance? And with that, kind of under the old saying is prevention is much better than a cure. If you have these insights, not only can you kind of assess events and their seriousness much quicker and much easier, but you can also make sure that you kind of move your capabilities, your technologies. Basically, you can move your organization out of harm's way and maybe focus, for instance, on, if you know that People are targeting remote access solutions. You can surround those with additional controls to make sure that you don't actually have to deal with an incident. You're basically able to stop it, right, nip it in the bud, as it were. So intelligence really helps you understand the threat landscape and helps you kind of stop things before they kind of get out of hand, as it were. Moving along, I think the other two capabilities are digital forensics. Once you do have events that kind of turn into or snowball into full-on incidents, having the ability to do forensics, and also having an incident response capability. And quite often that will be an external party that you can call in. Having those external resources is also very good. And I would say when you're setting up or building your SOC, that's when you want to invest and decide on those capabilities. Trying to look for an incident response partner while the incident is happening adds a lot of additional stress. So a little preparing that in advance really helps. So in short, intelligence, forensics, and incident response.
Okay, thank you. I think you nailed it. So thank you. So this question to Mr. Akash, we keep hearing about the problem of skill set in cybersecurity industry. So I have this question in mind, actually. Is shortage of skills still a problem for SOC? Let me talk about our region. I can see an upward trend of IT professionals in our region who are specialized in cybersecurity. More and more people are coming into this area. So is it still a problem? I think, Akash, you are muted.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Great question. And in fact, the way my fellow panelists have outlined it in the form that the world is changing, there are more threat agents present, and there has always been a shortage of skilled professional in this field of cybersecurity. So to answer the question, yes, there's always a shortage of such people who could manage. Now, why is this shortage? Where is this shortage is something that we need to address, in my opinion. While we are talking about increasing the efficiency, while we are talking about so many more threat agents in, say, for example, with the pandemic coming in somewhere around March 2020, we've distributed ourselves into millions of offices. So if you had 500 employees or 5,000 or 50,000 employees working in your organization in one office or 10 offices, now you've got 50,000 offices, each one at home. The difficulty of the job, the dynamicity of the job has increased manifold. So, and then we are talking about automation as a part of increasing the efficiency. We are talking about inducing machine learning and artificial intelligence and whatnot. So we're talking about skills which are required not just in the traditional SOC, which it used to be just 13 or 14 months ago, but we are talking about a whole lot of new dimensions that a SOC has taken up. So we need to, first of all, understand what is the org chart we are talking in a SOC. Which industry do you represent? Which sector you are in? What is the location you're based? So these are those things which are very important for any organization. And to an extent, while we can generalize a security operations center, but each segment, each industry sector would have its own nuances, own customization that is required. Now in a SOC, whether we take it as an internal inside SOC or we talk about an outside SOC, there are several roles. SOC analyst, several tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. We've got incident responders, we've got threat hunters, and all of them reporting into CISO. Now, this CISO also needs to understand the dynamicity. The poor guy already has had a lot of nightmares because of all the changes that are happening. Now, this is another one on top of it. So you understand when we talk about shortage of skill, while when you say that, yes, there is upward trend as far as the IT professionals are concerned, but not just in case of numbers, but we also need them in terms of the quality of those guys. On top of it, cybersecurity is an applied science. it's not something that you can study and you go out. You need to practice a lot. Not just in terms of the scenarios that you might be facing. It's a high tension, high pressure job. It's always a deadline. So you need to have the practice and experience. We are all here, cumulatively, we might have almost 80 years of experience among 4 of us. Think about it. What kind of experience is required to man a SOC there? So it's not just the shortage as in shortage. So I hope
I got you. I mean, yeah. Yeah, the scene is more complex than could be thought of. So in your opinion, how do you advise the companies to build up their SOC team?
So, like I said, we must first of all identify what is the org chart, and which, based on several factors which I mentioned in my answer to the last question. Once we've got that org chart, now let us find out, do we have people available with us? See, usually what happens is training always is something that people they kind of takes a backseat. I mean, in all practical purposes, I would say. First of all, identify if you've got people with you, because it's important that these guys, they understand your culture. While your people are working in several locations, they should be comfortable in telling you what kind of infrastructure now they have. They're working remote. They're working in their home Wi-Fi and so on. So they must be able to tell you what are. So it's always good to have people from inside. Say, for example, network security experts or network defense experts. Pick them up from inside. Look at the job role that you're going to put them in. Whether you're a highly automated, superbly efficient organization with a lot of machine learning and artificial intelligence into it, taking some cues from the words that both Osman and Maurits were speaking about from, and then identify those job roles, and then identify what are the skills they need to be imparted. That's one way of mitigating the shortage that we have. The second is pick up those people who are out there at the base level. I'm not talking about, so depending on what the org chart is, always typical pyramid. So when you look at the majority of the people, you'll find it from inside, and then you hire from the base levels from outside. So have a very, very robust learning and development environment, specifically and especially in today's world. Because if you're ignoring that, you may purchase all kinds of your software, hardware, integrate them as well as you can. But if you don't have people to run it, you know the problem. And those people must understand your culture. That's one.
Agree, Akash. Sorry, I got you here. So I need to move to this question, which is the last question, or it is about managed SOC approach. So that is for Mr. Osman. So when it is good to choose a managed SOC approach, and what are the considerations that need to be assessed?
Thank you, Hashim. So, I mean, there's typically 3 different types of models that you can take with regards to this. So you can try and build your SOC in-house. You can go to, like you said, managed SOC and MSSP provider, or you can have a hybrid of both. Now, the challenges around in-house SOCs are obviously, like Akash mentioned, getting resources in the marketplace, skilled resources. It's not easy. And when you do get them, it's not easy to retain them. So retention is crucial. So that can be challenging. And obviously, if you're building in-house, you're not just talking about a handful of resources. You're talking anywhere between 7 to 10 resources that you need, a minimum of 7, right? And that includes L1 analysts, L2 analysts, L3 analysts, threat analysts, threat hunters, your SOC lead, and you need coverage 24/7, like we said, to deal with the threat nowadays. So it's not a cheap exercise. You also think about CapEx expense as well. If you're buying the SIM license, if you're building it on your own platform, especially if you're not going to leverage the cloud, if you're building it, there's a hardware platform and then a refresh cycle around that. And then obviously the time scale, right? It typically takes 4 to 6 months to build a SOC at least. And then the processes that you have to develop as well. So around governance. So that's, they're the challenge around in-house, right? So I normally wouldn't advocate it unless, you're a very large institution and budget is not your primary concern. and you've got sensitive data assets that you're concerned about. Whereas SSPs, I would say this is where they come into play, is if time is of the essence, right? You want to get monitored and up and running as soon as possible. You don't want to worry about the skill sets and recruitment because they already have the resources. You're not paying a premium because the MSSP basically can leverage economies of scale. They're servicing a number of clients. They can spread their resources and their capabilities across those clients, and therefore the price to you will be significantly cheaper. But obviously one of the challenges there is they won't be as intimate with your environment as you would be with your environment, right? So that is that you need to take into account. In terms of considerations, right? So this is where you need to obviously make sure if you're selecting an MSSP that
we get 30 seconds.
30 seconds, right? So make sure you have an SLA backed up with penalties, put an NDA in place, get a contractual agreement in place, understand, get their customer references as well, make sure they comply with the regulatory bodies. I'd say there's some of the things to consider.
All right, thank you. So any final words for the organization who are planning to build up a SOC or running SOC? Now, this is an open question for all of you. Anyone who have a comment, this is like your final advice. So I'll start with you, Osman.
Yeah, I would say what's important is to think outcome, not outputs, right? I mean, a number of organizations, they've been told you need to have SOC monitoring, and what they end up doing is they build a SOC just to tick the box, right? But ultimately, it's about detecting and responding to potential threats to your assets, right? So don't just build it for building it. I'd say that's one. Before you decide whether you want to go in-house or hybrid or MSSP, build your business case, right? So you understand the total cost of ownership and the pros and cons.
Thank you. Sorry,
I'd say exploit your existing technologies. Sure.
Sorry, we got the time limitation.
Yeah, I would say also exploit your existing technologies. Sure.
I think your voice is also start cutting, so I'll move. Allow me to move to Maurits. Do you have your final word?
Yes. I think as in many things, building a SOC, as in many things in security, it's a journey, not so much a destination. And be prepared that things will change and evolve over time. So it won't ever be done, dusted, and it's all done. It's a journey and destination. So you can afford also to start somewhere and build out from there. On the outsourcing question, I would only say what they're delivering is a service. You're outsourcing that service. You cannot outsource the responsibility. The security of your infrastructure, your network will always ultimately be your responsibility. You cannot, no external party can take on that responsibility on your behalf.
Thank you. That is a great quote. You cannot outsource responsibilities. I like it. And Mr. Akash, do you have final word to the audience?
Well, there's something that I wanted always.
We got only 1 minute. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
So this something that I always tell people who come to me for when they're building up SOC, and they come and I always tell them that while you're taking care of software and hardware and the integration between the two, if you do not take care of your people, whether they will be able to operate a highly efficient SOC and something which can be changed with time. Last March, suddenly everything changed. People were unprepared. But there were organizations who were able to transform from this to that. So be prepared is what, and only people can make you prepared. Have an org chart there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Only people can make you prepared. Thank you. I like that. That's good. Guys, I would like to thank you again for this great session. I think it was very informative. Again, thank you. And now we are moving to the Q&A part. Thank you.